I never thought I would be the kind of person telling a story like this. Even now, it feels strange to say it out loud. After everything happened, I sat alone in my apartment for hours, staring at the walls, trying to understand how my life flipped so fast. The silence felt louder than any argument we ever had. Lauren wasn't just my sister. She was the person I defended when others doubted her. When she struggled, I stepped in without keeping score. I believed that was what family did. I didn't question her choices, even when my instincts quietly warned me to slow down. I told myself trust mattered more than fear. The morning after everything fell apart, I moved through my day like a ghost. I went to work pretending nothing was wrong, but my hands shook every time my phone buzzed. I kept hoping it was her, that she would explain, apologize, or at least say she was safe. Nothing came. That hurt more than the loss itself. By the end of that week, reality hit hard. I had to cancel plans, make uncomfortable calls, and admit I wasn't okay. Pride disappeared quickly when survival took over. Nights were the worst. My mind replayed old memories, searching for signs I missed. Every laugh, every promise, every time she said, "Trust me." I wondered how long she had been planning to walk away. What broke me most was not the money. It was the feeling of being erased. Like I had only been useful, not loved. I kept asking myself where I went wrong. Was I too kind? Too easy to rely on? Or did I simply love someone who saw me as a way out? At my lowest point, something unexpected happened. A small detail I almost ignored made me stop and think. It didn't fix anything right away, but it gave me clarity. For the first time since it all began, I felt something other than pain. I felt focus. I realized that falling apart wouldn't bring me peace, but understanding might. I started paying attention instead of reacting. I gathered what I could, thought carefully, and made choices with a calm I didn't know I had. Each step forward helped me breathe again. I wasn't healed, but I wasn't powerless either. Through all this, I learned a hard truth. Love without boundaries can destroy you. Trust should never mean giving up your voice or your protection. Family can hurt you deeper than strangers, but that doesn't mean you stay broken. This story isn't about anger. It's about waking up. It's about learning that even when betrayal comes from the closest place, you can still stand back up. I lost something important, but I gained something stronger. I gained myself. Lauren and I grew up side by side, not just as siblings but as best friends. I was older, so I naturally felt responsible for her. When we were kids, I was the one who walked her to school, waited outside her classroom, and made sure she got home safely. She trusted me, and I trusted her. That bond felt unbreakable. Everything changed when we lost our parents. The house felt empty overnight, and Lauren was still too young to handle everything on her own. I stepped into the role without thinking twice. I managed the paperwork, the bills, and all the decisions that felt too heavy for her at the time. I promised myself I would protect her, no matter what it cost me. As the years passed, I tried to give her stability. I helped her finish school and encouraged her to chase her goals. I wanted her to feel safe, not controlled. That was why I included her in my finances. Her name was on my accounts because I believed transparency meant trust. I thought it showed respect, not risk. I never imagined she would see it as an opportunity. To me, it was just another way to say, "I've got you." When she needed help, I didn't ask questions. When she made mistakes, I covered for her. I believed family support meant standing together, even when things were hard. Looking back, I can see how deeply I believed in that idea. I thought love was proven by access and loyalty was proven by silence. I never once checked my accounts because the thought of betrayal didn't exist in my mind. I felt proud that she trusted me enough to share that space. Friends warned me to be careful, but I brushed it off. I told them they didn't understand our bond. I believed blood was stronger than temptation. I believed shared history protected us from selfish choices. I believed my sister would guard what we built together. After our parents were gone, she became the last piece of family I had. That made me hold on tighter, not wiser. I was afraid that setting limits would feel like abandonment. So I kept everything open, thinking generosity would keep us close. What I didn't understand then was that trust without balance can become blindness. I gave without asking, protected without questioning, and assumed love would do the rest. I truly believed family would never hurt family. That belief shaped every choice I made, and it set the stage for everything that came after. Ryan entered Lauren's life quietly at first. She mentioned him in passing, like he wasn't important yet. When I finally met him, he came across as confident and smooth. He knew how to talk his way into a room and make people feel comfortable. At first, I thought he was just young and trying to figure life out. Over time, small things started to bother me. Ryan never stayed at one job for long. There was always a reason: his boss was unfair, the company was corrupt, or the work was beneath him. Each story sounded believable on its own, but together they formed a pattern. He talked big but never followed through. Money was always tight for him, yet he spent like it wasn't. New clothes, expensive nights out, and sudden trips he couldn't explain. When I asked how he managed it, he laughed it off and changed the subject. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. Lauren changed around him. She became defensive whenever his name came up. If I asked simple questions, she took them as attacks. She said I was being controlling and stuck in the past. According to her, Ryan understood her in ways no one else did. I noticed how he leaned on her emotionally. Whenever something went wrong, he made himself the victim. He spoke about dreams he couldn't reach because life had treated him unfairly. Lauren listened, comforted him, and slowly took on his problems as her own. There were moments when I tried to warn her. I suggested she slow down, think long-term, and protect herself. Ryan would smile politely during these conversations, but his eyes stayed cold. Afterward, Lauren would pull me aside and tell me to back off. She said love meant trust, and doubt meant disrespect. What worried me most was how often money came up. Ryan seemed too interested in what Lauren had access to. He asked casual questions that felt calculated. She brushed it off, saying he was just curious and planning a future with her. I ignored my instincts because I didn't want to lose her. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. I thought pushing harder would only drive her closer to him. So I stayed quiet when I should have spoken clearly. Each warning sign felt small on its own. Together, they formed a picture I didn't want to see. I chose peace over confrontation, hoping things would settle on their own. I didn't realize that silence was giving him exactly the space he needed to move closer to everything I had built. That morning started like any other. I reached for my phone before getting out of bed, expecting nothing more than routine notifications. Instead, I saw alerts that made my chest tighten. One message turned into several. My balance was negative. Payments had failed. Then another message said my account was temporarily frozen. I sat up, confused, thinking it had to be a mistake. I refreshed the screen again and again, hoping it would fix itself. It didn't. The numbers didn't make sense. Large amounts were missing, not just one transfer but many, spread out and fast. My hand shook as I tried to log in, only to be locked out. I called the bank immediately. The wait felt endless. When someone finally answered, their calm voice made everything feel worse. They confirmed the withdrawals. They listed dates and amounts. Each word felt like a blow. By the time the call ended, I knew this wasn't an error. My first thought was Lauren. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I sent messages asking if she was okay, if she knew what was happening. No reply. A strange fear settled in, heavy and cold. I didn't go to work. I drove home as fast as I could, my mind racing through worst-case thoughts. When I unlocked the door, the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. I walked straight to her room. The bed was stripped. The closet was bare. Drawers were open and empty. Even small personal items were gone. It was clear she hadn't left in a hurry. She had packed carefully. On the desk, there was a folded piece of paper. My name was written on it in handwriting I knew too well. I stood there for a long moment before opening it. The note was short. No apology. No explanation. Just a few words saying she needed to leave and that I should understand. I read it over and over, hoping I missed something. There was nothing else. No emotion. No warmth. It felt more like a decision than a goodbye. I sank onto the edge of the bed, trying to breathe. My thoughts felt slow and sharp at the same time. I checked my phone again. Still no response. Hours passed like that, stuck between disbelief and panic. As the day went on, the reality became clearer. She wasn't coming back. She didn't want to talk. Whatever had happened, it had been planned, and I was the last to know. That night, I sat alone in the dark, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the noise from the street outside. Everything I thought was stable had vanished in a single morning. Not just money, but certainty. Trust. The feeling of home. I realized that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was an ending, and I was standing alone at the start of something I never asked for. The days that followed were heavy and slow. Every morning brought another problem I didn't know how to fix. Bills arrived one after another, each one reminding me of what I no longer had. Rent, utilities, insurance, things I once handled without stress now felt impossible. I avoided opening emails because I already knew what they would say. My credit began to collapse. Payments failed, fees grew, and warning notices followed. I made calls I never thought I would have to make, explaining my situation to people who didn't care. Their polite voices couldn't hide the fact that my options were gone. Each conversation ended with the same answer: there was nothing they could do. Soon, even basic needs became a struggle. I counted coins and checked prices like I was living a different life. Asking for help felt humiliating, but hunger doesn't leave room for pride. I borrowed small amounts from people I barely spoke to anymore, promising myself it would be temporary. Every dollar came with guilt. The hardest part wasn't the money. It was the quiet moments when my mind wouldn't stop. I replayed conversations from the past, looking for meaning in things that once felt normal. Small comments, strange questions, moments that now seemed carefully placed. That's when the truth started to settle in. This hadn't been sudden. It wasn't panic or desperation. It was a plan. The thought cut deeper than any unpaid bill. While I was focused on keeping our lives stable, she had been preparing to leave. The trust one offered freely had been used slowly and deliberately. Shame wrapped itself around me. I felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. I blamed myself for being careless, for being kind without limits. I wondered how many people would judge me if they knew the full story. The idea of being pitted hurt almost as much as being betrayed. Sleep became difficult. When I did rest, I woke up exhausted, my body tense, my thoughts racing. I felt small and exposed, like the ground beneath me could disappear again at any moment. I stopped answering messages because I didn't know how to explain my situation without breaking down. There were moments when I questioned my worth. If the person who knew me best could do this, what did that say about me? I felt stripped of dignity, reduced to someone who had been used and discarded. Still, beneath the shame and fear, something else began to grow. It was quiet at first, easy to miss. A sense of clarity. I started to accept that what happened wasn't because I was weak, but because I trusted. That understanding didn't fix my problems, but it gave me a small sense of direction. Rock bottom is a lonely place. It forces you to look at yourself without comfort or illusion. In that place, I realized I had lost control of my situation, but not of my future. And even though I didn't know how yet, I knew I couldn't stay broken forever. After weeks of feeling stuck, I forced myself to focus on what I could still control. I began organizing every document I had left. Bank statements, old files, emails, and folders I hadn't opened in years. It felt pointless at first, but staying busy kept my mind from falling apart. One afternoon, while sorting through papers, something caught my attention. A transaction history didn't match what I had been told. The dates were spread out, not rushed. The amounts followed a pattern. It wasn't random. That alone made me pause. I went deeper. I checked older records, comparing them line by line. Some transfers were labeled incorrectly. Others were connected to accounts that didn't fully disappear. It was clear that not everything had been wiped clean. In her hurry to leave, she had overlooked details she thought no one would notice. As I followed the trail, a quiet understanding settled in. She had relied on one assumption, that I wouldn't look too closely. That I would be too hurt or ashamed to dig into the details. That mistake gave me my first real sense of leverage. I noticed repeated links between certain accounts and shared documents. The connections weren't obvious, but they were there. I didn't feel anger in that moment. I felt focus. For the first time since everything fell apart, I wasn't reacting. I was thinking. I made copies of everything and kept notes. Dates, times, and reference numbers. Each piece felt like a small step out of the darkness. I wasn't fixing the damage yet, but I was building understanding. The realization changed how I saw the situation. This wasn't just loss. It was a puzzle. One that had been rushed on her end and underestimated on mine. That shift mattered more than I expected. I stayed quiet. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't make calls or send messages. I knew moving too fast could ruin everything. Patience became my strength. Late at night, I sat alone with the documents spread across the table. The weight of betrayal was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I could see a path forming, narrow but real. That mistake she made didn't bring instant relief, but it brought hope. Not loud hope, not emotional hope. Calm hope. The kind that comes from knowing the truth is still reachable. In that moment, I understood something important. Plans built on deception are never perfect. People always leave traces behind. And when they do, those traces can become the beginning of accountability. I wasn't ready to celebrate. I wasn't even sure how far this would go. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer powerless. And that quiet shift changed everything that came next. Once I understood what I was dealing with, I made a clear choice. I wouldn't act on anger. Anger had already taken enough from me. I knew that one emotional move could destroy whatever chance I had left to fix things. So I slowed down and stayed quiet. I began rebuilding my life in small, careful steps. I cut unnecessary expenses and focused only on what mattered. Every decision was measured. I kept my routines simple and my thoughts focused. This wasn't about rushing forward. It was about standing steady. I followed the trail with patience. Every document led to another detail. Each answer created a clearer picture. I treated it like work, not like personal pain. That distance helped me think clearly. I reminded myself that control came from preparation, not reaction. When the time felt right, I reached out to people who understood these situations. I didn't tell my story with emotion. I shared facts. Dates, numbers, and records. Their responses were calm and professional, which grounded me even more. They helped me see which steps mattered and which ones didn't. I listened more than I spoke. I asked questions and wrote everything down. Each conversation gave me clarity and confidence. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was looking for direction. Quietly, I started protecting what little I had left. I separated access, secured my information, and closed every open door. Each action felt like reclaiming a small piece of myself. I was no longer waiting for something to happen. I was shaping what came next. There were moments when emotion tried to break through. Memories surfaced unexpectedly. Guilt whispered that I was doing something wrong by preparing for confrontation. But I reminded myself that standing up for the truth wasn't cruelty. It was self-respect. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Silence became my shield. The less noise I made, the more control I had. I knew that when the time came, I needed facts, not drama. This process wasn't fast. Some days felt painfully slow. But progress doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like discipline. Sometimes it looks like restraint. As I prepared, my fear slowly turned into confidence. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind. I stopped imagining worst outcomes and started focusing on realistic ones. That shift changed how I carried myself. Turning pain into strategy didn't erase what happened. It gave it purpose. I wasn't seeking revenge driven by rage. I was seeking balance, accountability, and closure. And for the first time since everything collapsed, I felt ready to face the truth head-on, with clarity instead of chaos. When the moment finally came, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt heavy. I had their location, the confirmations I needed, and enough proof to speak with confidence. My heart raced, but my mind stayed clear. I wasn't there to beg or accuse. I was there to hear the truth. Seeing Lauren again was harder than I expected. She looked different, thinner, tense. Ryan stood close to her, but his confidence was gone. The silence between us was thick. No one rushed to speak. I started calmly. I didn't raise my voice. I laid out what I knew, piece by piece. Dates. Transactions. Decisions. I watched their faces change as I spoke. Ryan tried to interrupt, but I kept going. Facts don't need permission. Lauren avoided my eyes at first. When she finally looked up, her expression broke. She said it wasn't supposed to happen like this. That it started small. That Ryan had convinced her it was temporary, that they would replace everything once they were stable. Ryan quickly denied that. He said Lauren was the one who pushed for it. That she wanted out and used him as an excuse. His words were sharp, desperate. The picture they had tried to maintain collapsed in minutes. They began blaming each other. Stories shifted. Details didn't match. Every lie created another crack. I stayed quiet and let them speak. The more they talked, the clearer everything became. Lauren admitted she had felt trapped and wanted a fresh start. She said she believed I would recover, that I was strong enough to survive it. Hearing that hurt more than anything else. Strength, to her, had meant being used. Ryan's role became obvious. He had encouraged distance, fed doubt, and pushed urgency. He never forced her, but he guided every step. The truth wasn't simple, and that made it worse. There were tears. There was anger. But there was no turning back. The moment they realized I wasn't confused or emotional anymore, the tone changed. Fear replaced control. I told them I wasn't there for excuses. I was there for accountability. The room felt smaller after that. Lauren cried quietly. Ryan said nothing. Walking away from that meeting felt strange. I didn't feel victory. I felt clarity. The truth wasn't comforting, but it was real. And real was better than confusion. For the first time, I saw them not as family or threats, but as people who made choices and now had to face them. The confrontation didn't fix the damage, but it stripped away the lies. That truth changed everything. It gave me peace, not because it erased the pain, but because it ended the guessing. I finally knew what happened, why it happened, and who I was dealing with. And that knowledge gave me the strength to move forward without carrying their deception with me anymore. After the confrontation, I focused on action, not emotion. Everything moved through proper channels. I followed the process step by step, even when it felt slow. I learned quickly that patience matters more than anger when you want real results. The evidence I had gathered spoke for itself. Records don't argue or lie. They show patterns, intent, and responsibility. With the right guidance, those details became my strongest protection. Each document I submitted felt like lifting a weight off my chest. I didn't chase punishment. I chased fairness. There is a difference. I wanted what was taken returned, and I wanted clear boundaries so it could never happen again. That mindset kept me steady when things became uncomfortable. Lauren had to face the reality of her decisions. Not through shouting or threats, but through consequences she couldn't escape. Watching her realize that there was no easy way out was painful, but necessary. Responsibility is heavy when you can't hand it to someone else. Ryan didn't stay once the money was no longer there. His support vanished as quickly as his promises. He stepped away without ceremony, leaving Lauren to deal with the aftermath alone. That silence said more than any argument ever could. I didn't feel satisfaction watching things fall apart for them. I felt closure. Knowing the truth had weight, but knowing accountability existed brought balance. Justice didn't shout. It worked quietly, firmly, and without drama. At the same time, I protected my future. I changed access, rebuilt safeguards, and learned where my blind spots had been. I didn't rush these steps. I took my time and did them right. Trust, once broken, needs structure to exist again. There were moments when guilt tried to creep in. A voice in my head asked if I had gone too far. But then I remembered the nights I couldn't sleep, the days I went hungry, and the truth about intent. Standing up for myself wasn't cruelty. It was survival. As the process ended, something unexpected happened. I felt lighter. Not because everything was perfect, but because the situation was no longer hanging over me. There were no loose ends. No unanswered questions. Lauren and I no longer spoke. That distance wasn't punishment. It was protection. Some relationships can't return to what they were, and forcing them only causes more damage. Justice didn't give me back time or trust. It gave me stability. It gave me a clean line between past and future. And sometimes, that is enough. I walked away knowing I had handled things with control and clarity. I didn't lose myself to anger. I didn't become what hurt me. I chose accountability over chaos. What was taken didn't define me anymore. How I responded did. And that quiet strength became the foundation for everything I built next. After everything was settled, I realized that healing wouldn't happen overnight. It wasn't about money or proof anymore. It was about rebuilding myself from the inside out. I started small, daily routines, focusing on work, and making choices that were healthy for me. Each day felt like laying another brick in a foundation that had been shaken to the core. I learned to set boundaries. At first, it felt unnatural. I had always believed that helping family meant giving freely, without limits. But now I understood that boundaries aren't walls, they're protection. They let you love without losing yourself. I created rules for what I would allow in my life and what I wouldn't. I decided who could access my trust, my space, and my resources. Loneliness came at times, and grief did too, but I grew more aware of my own strength. I stopped looking for approval from people who had hurt me. Instead, I focused on myself and the people who truly mattered. I realized that self-respect isn't selfish, it's necessary. Protecting yourself doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you value your well-being enough to stand firm. I also learned a painful but important truth about trust. Blind trust can be dangerous, even with those you love most. I wouldn't give my confidence freely anymore. That didn't mean I became cold or cynical, it meant I was cautious. I started evaluating situations carefully, observing patterns, and listening to instincts. That carefulness became my shield, not my punishment. Slowly, life began to feel lighter. I paid off what I owed, rebuilt my credit, and regained financial independence. But more importantly, I rebuilt my inner sense of security. I started making decisions for myself first, without fear of betrayal controlling every move. Each step forward reminded me that survival isn't just enduring, it's growing. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, people who respected my experiences and supported my choices. I surrounded myself with honesty and loyalty, the kind I had been missing. Their presence reminded me that family isn't always defined by blood, it's defined by trust and care. In quiet moments, I thought about Lauren. I accepted that some relationships can't be repaired. Trying to force them would only reopen wounds. Instead, I focused on lessons learned, how to recognize manipulation, how to protect my assets, and how to prioritize my mental and emotional health. By the time months passed, I could see how far I had come. The pain was still there, but it no longer ruled me. I had boundaries, self-respect, and clarity. I had turned a betrayal that could have broken me into a foundation for growth. I understood that life doesn't always protect you from heartbreak, but it does give you the chance to rebuild stronger. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Respecting yourself doesn't mean abandoning love. And in that balance, I finally found peace.